my whole purpose and mission is to help women find their personal power, because it doesn't always relate to modeling, of course, but where in your life do you feel your personal power being taken away? Is it in a relationship? Is it in your finances? Is it with sharing your story? How is it being taken from you? And that's what I help women do now.
Hey, I'm Brooke Jean, therapist, recovering perfectionist, and struggling working mom on a mission to normalize normal. If you're an overwhelmed, high-achieving, and secretly anxious mama, struggling to balance it all and on the brink of burnout, you are in the right place. Here is where we talk about hard things like balancing work and family life, mental health, and how to navigate life-altering transitions. Nothing is too taboo here. In my conversations, I'll teach you how to let go of who you think you're supposed to be in order to create the life you've always wanted. Get ready to embrace your messy, shed the shoulds, and find freedom through a life unperfected. This is the Unperfected Pod. Hey, lovely. Welcome back to the Unperfected Pod. I am so happy and grateful that you're here. This week on the podcast, I had the fabulous Sabrina Greer on the show. Sabrina Greer is a best-selling author, book publisher, keynote and TEDx speaker, PR strategist, and authority coach to global thought leaders. She is the CEO and visionary behind Fem Power Publications, Inc., a publishing house and intellectual influence company for women. As a survivor of nearly 2 decades in the beauty industry and fashion model in recovery, Sabrina is passionate about amplifying the voices of women so that they can claim their authority. My loves, we talk about her journey of being a fashion model and her journey home to herself and understanding that her self-worth is so much more than how she looks and what she can offer. We talk about women finding and reclaiming the power of their voice and how needed that is in our culture and society today. And we also talk about having the audacity, the courage to find a missing gap in an industry and to create the product that is missing. Because this is what she did in the publishing industry. She created the thing that she so needed as an author that now she gets to leverage to help amplify women's voices worldwide. I loved this conversation. I know you will too. Enjoy. Welcome back, Sabrina. I am so excited to have you on the show. We are newer friends. We have come across each other, and the work that you're doing in the world is so needed and special. But first of all, just welcome. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Well, I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
Yes. Let's start with your story. Okay. Let's start with tell the people a little bit about you and a little bit about what you do. And then we'll get into how you got into your extraordinary business and the things that you're doing.
Well, as most entrepreneurs that I know and women in business, it has not been a linear path. So it wasn't like my guidance counselor in high school said, one day you're going to be this, and then poof, it all happened. So the story evolved over time. It shifted and pivoted and moved in different directions. And I think if I was to look at my core values and what really started this work for me, I've always been a writer. I've always been a creative person. I've always loved expressing myself through words and understood the importance of words. And when I recognized that I could help other people find their voice, step into their true passion and calling, that's when I decided to do what I do. So I call myself an authority coach, author, itty. The author part being because I'm also a book publisher. I don't know if you can see behind me, but we've published over 450 women to date and helped thousands develop their story, whether that's in keynote speech form or, presenting themselves to media, just getting their voice out there in a way that is authentic to them. So that's my true passion. I'm a book publisher. I'm an authority coach. I'm also a podcast host. I'm also a public speaker and, all the things. I'm also a mom and a pet owner, and I call myself a rookie farmer. And that's the
Wait, yeah, you said that you were farming on your Instagram story. What are we farming? I need to know more of this part of you. You haven't shared this with me yet, girl. What are we
no.
farming?
So my husband and I bought 70 acres
Oh
of
my gosh.
forested farmland. So the actual farmland part is not very much. We have more of a hobby farm, I would call it. So we have goats and chickens. We have our own eggs, and really it's more about the property itself. But we decided, this was pre-pandemic, we decided to get out of the city. I've always been a city globetrotter party girl kind of vibe, and I didn't grow up on a farm. I have no farming experience. And we decided it was time to not look out our bathroom window into our neighbor's bathroom window anymore. And one day we looked at each other and we drew a circle on a map and said, where are we going? Because he still commutes 4 days a week to the city. So we're about an hour outside of Toronto, Ontario in Canada. And yeah, it's an interesting lifestyle living in, I guess, farmsteading is what I would call it. Homesteading with some farm stuff, animals
Oh
and
my
land.
gosh. I love it. We went from city life to that. What helped you like uncover that that was a desire that you had, right? Like so many women, I feel like we're all just like going through the motions. We're doing the things we're supposed to be doing. We've got the job, we've got the husband, we've got the career. And then we wake up one day and we're like, this actually isn't it for me. And
Yeah.
then we're like, who am I really? And what do I actually desire? And so for you to get to the place where you just draw a circle on a map with your husband, that is not normal. That's extraordinary. That takes audacity. Like, what led you up to that point?
I think in staying true to my nature, in really claiming my voice and speaking up for what I want, I craved nature. I craved peace. I craved silence on some level
Mm-hmm.
and serenity. And we just weren't achieving that in the city. You know, we bought our dream home in the city and our kids were born there. And, you know, we had a great life. And arguably, as far as the city life goes, and something
Mm-hmm.
still didn't feel right in my gut, in my soul, in my bones. And I knew it was time. And luckily, I have a partner that was on board. So it wasn't a one sided decision. And even though he commutes regularly,
Mm-hmm.
we've made quite the little routine of it all, and we love it. And you know, I've lived in, and I'll tell more about my story in a bit, but I've lived in 30 different cities around the world, and some of the biggest
Wow.
cities that you could speak of. And I don't feel like I'm missing anything. I've lived that.
Wow.
I've done that part.
Yeah,
So,
you've
yeah,
traveled. Okay, so
yeah.
what part of your life led you to see so many places in the world?
Well, and then we have to rewind. So
Yeah. You know,
I'm
girl, just start
currently
at birth.
in
Let's
my,
start in utero. What was your
here's
mom's
my,
stresses?
exactly. I never know how deep to go because, you know, everyone wants to hear different pieces. And I feel like I've lived hundreds of years in my 42 years of life. And, you know, that's both a good and a crazy thing, depending on the day and what day you ask me.
Totally.
But
Yes.
I started, in grade 10, so high school, I decided I wanted to get out and see the world and do bigger things. And I knew I was made for more. And I always had that sort of thing inside of me, call it fire, call it passion, call it, audacity, as you just did, whatever it
Yeah.
was. I just knew there was something bigger for me out there. So I actually signed a contract as a fashion model. I was with Ford Models and I traveled all over. My first trip, I was 16 years old and I went to Taipei, Taiwan. And that led
Wow.
me to Tokyo. And then that led me to Cape Town, South Africa, and Johannesburg, and Milan, and Paris, and New York, and Miami, and Los Angeles, and like, you name it. And I've probably been there and I've probably worked there. But
Wow.
that became sort of the story I tell in hindsight about that part of my life because, so many people see that as glamorous and cool and like amazing and so exciting and wow, lucky you, and that's great. It's so far from glamorous. I can't even explain. And, I survived, as I call it, industry abuse, a lot of Me Too moments, a lot of,
Wow.
being sold essentially for my body in many ways. I think the fashion industry is very comparable to, other industries that people can talk about that aren't so positively judged. It's
Yeah.
just the way it goes, right? You're an object, you're a mannequin, you're being paid to look a certain way and be a certain way. And that really felt in a lot of ways like it took my personal power away. So
Mm.
my whole purpose and mission is to help women find their personal power, because it doesn't always relate to modeling, of course, but where in your life do you feel your personal power being taken away? Is it in a relationship? Is it in your finances? Is it with sharing your story? How is it being taken from you? And that's what I help women do now. So a lot of
Wow.
our books, a lot of the women I publish, a lot of the women I interview on my podcast have a story. We all have a story, and a story worth sharing. So I help women free their voice, unleash their voice, really claim
Yes.
who they are. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So how long were you doing the modeling thing? And then how did you know you were stripped of your personal power? Like, what was the result? Like, coming out of that industry, what was going on in the self-worth,
Yeah.
in the energy, in the, you know what I mean? Like, idea of self, like what happened in that time for you?
I was very young when I started. I mentioned I was 16 when I traveled for the first time, but I started modeling when I was 13 years old.
Oh,
And
wow.
by the time I was 23, they told me I was too old to continue the career that I had, that I would only be doing anti-aging campaigns and hemorrhoids ads from that point forward, because
At
23 is
23.
too old to model. And
Wow.
I saw this happening a lot in the industry. Young girls, can't even call us women at that age, girls being treated like objects. And of course, that does a number on your self esteem. I call it self esteem roulette. You don't know what you're walking into every single day, whether it's a nice client, whether it's a nice makeup artist, whether it's a nice designer or stylist. And it is self esteem roulette. Some days, I remember in the same day in a casting studio that had multiple castings going on in Milan, I went into one and they were speaking German, and my roommate was Greek German, and she understood German fluently, but looked very Greek, so they didn't expect it. And I asked her what they had said when we exited the building together. And she's like, "Well, do you really want to know?" I said, "Of course." She said, "Well, the one client said that you needed to eat a sandwich, that you were too skinny. And the other one said the exact opposite, that you were overweight and they didn't know why your agent was sending you to this casting." That was in the same day, the same
Wow.
building.
Wow.
So that moment was a realization for me that I can't take outside external sources and allow that to define my worth, because that doesn't make sense. If in the same
Mm-mm.
day, in the same building, wearing the same clothing, I didn't gain 5 pounds or 10 pounds between one door and the other door in 5 minutes. So it
Mm-mm.
really just sort of opened my eyes to, huh, wow. I realized at that point in my life, I think I was 18 or 19 when that happened, that up until that point, I had been allowing people to take my personal power away from me by putting me down, by saying I was too this, too that, too thin, too fat, too flat, too blonde, too brunette, too this, too that, you name it. I've been
Yep.
called literally everything in the book, and told I wasn't enough, and told I was ugly and not good enough. And because they don't treat you like people, they treat you like objects. And that's a blanket statement, of course. There's some lovely people I met in the industry in my time, and I'm so grateful for them, because without those people, who knows where I'd be today. But there's a lot of the opposite as well.
Yeah. So this impossible standard,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's impossible. You're either too skinny,
Impossible.
too fat, too tall, too whatever. How do you feel that striving for perfection is but perfection is like a moving target, right? How do you feel that phenomenon, striving for perfection or a moving target, contributes to a woman losing her power and her voice?
In every way, I think. We focus on what we think other people expect of us and what we think other people want from us, whether that's partners in business or life, whether that is our children, our parents. Look around and you name it, right? I think that is it. We grow up with this, and not everyone is subjected to what I was subjected to, but on some level, we are. Mine was just amplified and accentuated in an industry that's what it's all about. But I think all women at some point are subjected to this belief that their worth is defined by external sources. And that happens in advertising and in media. I finished my TED talk a few months ago about redefining beauty in the digital era, because now with beauty improvement apps is what they actually call them. That's what they're beauty improvement apps, filters, body modification tools, all of these things that are digital. So we're not talking about plastic surgery. We're not talking about Botox or like, these are things that with the click of a button, children as young as 4 years old is the age rating on a lot of these beauty improvement apps, can modify their appearance with the click of a button, with a device, with an iPad or a cell phone. So what is that teaching our kids? What is that saying to the youth of the next generation, right? It's a completely new iteration of a very old problem.
Yes. Yeah, because the messaging is you're not enough as you are. Your worth is tied to your physical appearance or what you can do for others.
Yeah.
And like these are the deep subconscious messages that we're receiving, because a lot of people will be like, well, you talk a lot about conditioning, Brooke, and how the society has told us to be good girls. And this is what, births perfectionism, which ultimately births dissatisfaction because it's disconnection from the truth of who you are when you're trying to be what society has deemed is desirable. But people are like, I don't really resonate. And I'm like, it's so insidious that like it's the fact that there's an entire booming industry of beauty altering apps that our children are on. It's the fact that you can change your appearance on Zoom. It's like built into Zoom now that you can filter, right? It's all of these things that are sometimes very quietly speaking to our soul and our spirit and our subconscious, saying you're missing it. You could be skinnier. You could be more beautiful. You could, be more tasteful in your expression of yourself. You could. And these are the things that are putting the pressure on us to be something that's maybe not true to who we are.
Exactly. I had a reporter ask me just the other day, actually, what my thoughts were on the body positivity movement and if that's actually segregating people who are thin or who identify as thin. These are the words that this reporter used. And I said, what are you talking about? This beauty positivity movement, you mean people of different body shapes being represented in the media, I'm assuming. And he said, yeah, that's exactly what I mean. I said, but are they? Is that really what's happening? Or because we're not showcasing everyday women. And there are some brands who are doing it very well. Some beauty brands, some product brands who are doing it very, very well. And those are the ones that I support. Those are the ones that I get behind. But there's so much on the other side of it that's still speaking this artificial life into what is perfection. People who think that this is perfect. Now I'm not good enough because I'm skinny. Now I'm not good enough because I don't have, butt implants or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's just the pendulum is swinging. It's like the moving target has gotten bigger. That's all it is, right? And I don't mean bigger in body composition.
Size,
I mean bigger in just in general. There's like, it's harder to understand. And, it really does boil down to perfectionism. It's now we don't know what's perfect. And why do we want to aim for perfect or strive for perfect? Like how does that even make sense? So that's my stance on that.
Yeah. And like, as it relates to creativity and just like women using their voice. And I agree, like everyone is affected. Men are affected. Boys are affected. No matter what your body size is, like everyone is affected by this idea that we should look perfect. And that is the problem. But I think for women specifically, when you've been told you're not enough and you need to
Mm-hmm.
be different and look different and behave different, that silences your like direct connection to yourself, to your soul, to your intuition. And so if you have to doubt the way that you look, you start to doubt your own thoughts. You start to doubt your beliefs. You start to doubt your voice, your desires. And so it's like, to me, it parallels, right? We live in this perfectionist society where we start to question our own truth, which limits our freedom and our creativity and the way that we utilize our voice. So it's like, you've got to deal with the perfectionism and all of the beliefs that you've developed that of who you're supposed to be and what success looks like and what worth looks like, so that you can liberate your creative juices and your voice. Like, they both have to happen simultaneously. But I can see where there's probably millions of women who have lost trust in themselves, and that is stunting their freedom of their voice.
100%.
What do you say about that?
Yeah, I think that is the mission, like my mission specifically, because it needs to start with the mind. We need to train our minds to believe in ourselves, to really understand that this vessel that carries us around, the flesh suit, as I've heard it be called before, that carries us around, is not the important part. So our focus, my focus in my coaching business and as a publisher and a publicist, is really to help women anchor in their intellectual influence, right? Because I think that's often taken away. It's okay, I'm going to show up on social media today. I need my hair to be perfect. I need my makeup to be perfect. I have to wear a certain thing. I have to have a curated feed. I have to like look this way. And, you know, I've heard people say before, it's not about what it looks like, it's about what it is. But I think there's a way to do that without it being perfect, right? We don't want to see everyone's hot mess all the time. Of course, that's not what social media is about. But these perfectly curated feeds and these perfectly curated AI written sentences, and, you know, it's not even just about the physical anymore. It's about all of these different components. Just be real, right? Just show up with your message. And that's really what I want to help women achieve, is anchoring in their intellectual influence. And we do that through books, sure, but we also do that through, like, we help women start podcasts. We help women get keynote talks, TED Talks. We help women, you know, really just create their social media presence in a way that is organic, in a way that feels like them. It's authentic, it's powerful, it's unique, and it's still impactful. And that's the intellectual influence movement that I'm really moving towards. It's not about being an influencer, like, hi, buy my whatever. It's like, no, it's your intellectual influence. How are you influencing people with your mind, with your thoughts, with your presence, with what you're saying, and how you're embodying those words and how you're acting and showing up?
Yes. Oh my gosh. I feel like our culture is just like starving for real.
Yeah.
The further down the AI road we get, I feel like the more people are going to be disinterested in the perfection and just crave somebody who's willing to be what they are, say what they think. That is like real intimacy is what we're actually starved of as a collective right now. We don't want more fake news. Like, we're done. We want some shit that's real, that's relatable, that inspires us to move or to think differently about our lives and to reconnect to our own truth. Because once we start to tap into that, it feels really good. So let me go back. So from modeling to this amazing business that you offer now, what happened after modeling?
Well, I think there's 100 different things.
Yeah, I was like, there's a decade or so of work in there. Like, because and you don't have to give us every detail, but like, how did you end up from modeling into authorship and coaching and PR and all the good things that you do now?
Yes. So I had a corporate job for a little while because when I was told I was too old to model and that my career was over, and I realized I didn't even graduate high school because I was modeling overseas with a tutor. I wrote my GED, which in Canada at least is like the equivalency exam for high school. And then I went back to school. So I went for developmental psychology an education, and I thought I was going to be a teacher. And I ended up getting a corporate job as an event planner and beverage alcohol trainer. So random.
A beverage
Random,
alcohol
but
trainer?
yeah. So I was a beer, wine, and spirits buyer for chain restaurants all around North America. And I would go in and train bartenders how to make drinks. Because I had been a bartender alongside modeling for most of my life. I was very comfortable in front of and behind a bar. I was not shy. And the job, even though it had nothing to do with my education, it worked for me. And I did that for almost 10 years. And then I got pregnant. And during my pregnancy, that job was no longer conducive, obviously. Bar jobs, late nights, holidays, working, it wasn't right for a family. And I'd always wanted to be an author. So I had published my first book, or I had written my first book at that point and published it with a publisher. And things went sideways. We had a creative difference, I will call it, because I don't want to call anyone out for anything more than that. But there was about an $80,000 and 2-year lawsuit and things to get my intellectual property back into my hands. And that's how the traditional publishing world often works, is intellectual property is owned by the publisher, not by the author. Self-publishing felt like a massive mountain to climb and was insane. So I felt like there was this crevasse-sized gap between the two worlds and no bridge. And it really frustrated me. And I said, you know what? I've heard from so many of my mentors. I was deep into the personal development work at this point in my life too. And so many people had said, if it doesn't exist, build it. If it doesn't exist, create it, make it. I had no intentions of being an entrepreneur. So I thought it was terrifying. And I really didn't think I was cut out for it. You know, I had never studied business. I didn't know what to do, but my soul was yelling at me to do this. Because if I could do it for myself, then I could do it for other people. And that really anchored in this value of like, I go first. If I can do it for myself, I can do it for anyone. And that's when it really changed for me. So I trademarked and created an entirely new modality of publishing called blended publishing, where we literally blend the best of all the existing publishing models out there and cut out the worst parts, which there's a lot of worst parts out there. And we really created a safe space for women. Specifically, my company's called Fem Power Publications. So we really focus on nonfiction female writers in the personal growth and professional growth development spaces. And that was it for me, right? I had had all this sort of up and down experience, and I've lived in the city. Now I live in the country. I've had a corporate job, and so far from a corporate job with the modeling, I've traveled all over. So I think I was sort of checking off the boxes of what I didn't want first, so I could discover what I truly did want. When I realized my power, not just my personal power, but the power I have to help other people in what I do, I woke up. Something inside me woke up, and all of the things I was worried and nervous and stressed about becoming a business owner disappeared, because my mission was bigger than all of that. So everything I wanted, I learned. I figured out how to do it. So I had authors saying, well, I'd really love this, and I'd really love to have more PR, and so I got certified as a publicist and took a program in PR. I've done web design courses and programs. I've done InDesign and graphic design stuff so I can better serve my clients. Everything I do now is developing my skills so that I can do more for the people that I serve.
This is something that I so see in you and I respect so much, Sabrina. Like, if you want to be successful, listener, do what Sabrina has done, where you see a gap in the marketplace based on your own pain. Honestly, this is why I say there's magic in the mess, man. There's always magic in the mess if you're awake and willing to say yes to the challenge. And it's okay if you're not, but like, you go through this, $80,000 2-year dark night of the soul in the publishing realm to then go, there's a better way and I'm going to create it. That takes audacity. Okay. Audacity is the theme right now that we're just going off on. That takes audacity. And then being willing to educate yourself and to learn and to gather and to grow, to create what is really going to help liberate women and their voices. That's what I think makes you so special and unique and rare, because not everybody has the courage or the audacity to do that. And as somebody who's started 3 books and not published a single one, the gaps that you've identified was the reason why I haven't published a book. It was like, I didn't want to give up all my rights in the traditional and become a slave to social media numbers. That didn't feel authentic to me. I want to grow my message and my work very authentically with zero pressure, because it feels good, not because I'm trying to get numbers for a publisher to then stress about paying back the advance or whatever. And then like to hybrid publish was like $30,000, and it was just like a huge investment and whatever. And then to self-publish felt like I would be a little too on an island on my own. And so this blended publishing that you created, literally you're the first person that I heard talking about this. And I was like, holy crap, I know personally how needed this is in the marketplace. But that's what I feel like entrepreneurship is really about, is like finding from your suffering some method of madness where you can help others, and having the audacity to do the damn thing, do what's not been done, and then carve a path for other women. It's so cool.
And listen, it has not been easy.
There's never is.
It's not like I said, I'm going to build a bridge. Yeah, I'm going to build a bridge. And it's like, we're not talking Legos here. This took 7 years since I incorporated my company, and that other stuff happened where everything went sideways. You know, my youngest, who I was pregnant with at that time, is now 8 years old, right? So this is doesn't happen overnight. And you're absolutely right. It takes courage for sure. And courage, you know, I've always been courageous. I've always been adventurous. I've always been willing to walk out on the skinny branch and do the thing. But it also takes confidence, which nobody's born with confidence. Confidence is a skill that you develop over time. And that is, you work hard at it. You train your mind to believe it, and then you go. But it takes all of it. It takes clarity. It takes confidence. It takes courage. An equal combination of the 3 of those things to really do it. And if you don't have courage naturally, you borrow it. You say, okay. And I love, actually, Mel Robbins has a book called The 5-Second Rule, where you speak back, like you count backwards from 5. It's like, okay, you got to make that phone call, or you got to have that difficult conversation, or you've got to do the thing. And you go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. And you count backwards, because there's nowhere to go beyond that. And then you just do the thing. Takes 2 seconds. And so many people are terrified of the reactions. Again, this outside source, this outside validation of what's going to happen. And it's like, if somebody says no, you'll be okay. You're going to be okay. You're not literally like walking out on a skinny branch over a cliff, like life or death. And I think we take this monster, we create this monster in our mind when it comes to doing the thing. And I also love when people say doing the thing is not pretending to do the thing, talking about doing the thing, planning to do the thing, carving out time to do the thing, putting the thing on your to-do list, you know, studying the thing, taking more programs and courses about the thing, and then not doing the thing. The only thing that is doing the thing is doing the thing. And you need to just jump and do the thing.
Yes. Why do I feel called out right now? It's like she knows. It's like she knows us, guys. She gets us. I like to write down the thing on a list, then transfer it to 14 other lists. And then I've got so many lists, and then I need to get reorganized again about the list. But you're right. Like, doing the thing is what builds the confidence. That's what I call integrity. It's like, and what I think helps with this is being connected to your why. It's like, because a no from a potential client or a no from a whatever won't shake you as detrimentally when you're clear and you're a full body, like nips hard yes for your why. right?
Yeah.
Because the yes to the why I'm doing this in the first place gets to be bigger than the no's and the rejections and the feedbacks and the naysayers and the people who are misunderstanding you and all of the things. But it's like when you get really clear on your why you're doing the damn thing, then you got to show up in small doses. And that's what builds the confidence. And it is something that you can grow and build over time. But it starts with taking the damn action. Why do you think, based on your experience and all the women that you've been, I like to call you like the author, doula, and advocate as well. That's like, you're the author, doula, and advocate. And I just get like such deep, like advocate energy from you. Like you are going to stand for this author and her mission and her story and her like, and I just know like, without even having personally worked with you yet, it's like you stand for that. Like you got your people's back. At least that's the sense that I get from you.
Absolutely.
But what do you, in your experience, what do you think blocks women from that confidence or from showing up and taking the damn action?
Yeah,
Really?
I think so. In between all of the things I did in my life, I took a time out and I went to South America and I climbed Machu Picchu. And I did it the hard way, not the way that had a bus available, not the way that was like easy. I was like, no, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. And I'm going to do it by myself. And I'm going to do it in January, which is wet season and cold season. And it was a 7-day, 6-night hike with snow and all the things. And, you know, I had $7 in my bank account and a pair of borrowed hiking boots. And I did it anyway. And one step at a time, I was able to do it. But when I kept looking up at that peak of the mountain, I was like, I call in the helicopter. I'm literally not going to make it. I can't. Look at that. That's so far and it's so treacherous and it's so scary. And I'm not cut out for this. I'm already out of breath. The altitude is low. I feel sick. What if I don't like the food? What if I like, there's no bathrooms on the mountain? Like, I don't want to do my business in a hole in the snow. Like,
not preferably. That's not my first place.
Yeah, I'm carrying a backpack that's half my weight, and I don't know what the heck I'm doing. And you know, I'm sleeping in a one-person tent on the side of a freaking mountain. We keep looking at the end goal. We keep looking at the peak of the mountain instead of the next step in front of us. And I think that's what blocks a lot of people, is they think a 60,000 word manuscript is too big. Or, you know, starting a podcast and like having hundreds of thousands of people potentially hearing my voice is too big. Or whatever, like buying a house is too big. Or, you know, starting a new job is too big. We look at the big thing instead of what's the first step? What's today? What can I do right now? And then what do I do tomorrow? Instead of having a to-do list that's 8,000 steps long, have like one step that moves the needle forward, that gets you to that thing. Because I can tell you right now, if I focused on the peak of that mountain, I would have literally called in a helicopter. I would have been that person. And there were people. There were 6 people out of 15 of us on that trek that left by helicopter before we reached the point of no return, as they called it. So I could have done it. I had an out. I had an escape route. We all do. You don't have to write a book. You don't have to start a podcast. You don't have to do the thing. But if your soul is telling you, I didn't have to climb a mountain. What kind of crazy crap is
not
that?
In January either, babe.
Not in January. Well, alone. Like, what am I even thinking? And the hiking boots I borrowed were like half a size too small and were crushing my toes. Lord. And I'm like, why am I doing this? I don't have to do this because my soul told me to do it. And I wanted to do it and I wanted to follow through. So we have a choice. We always have a choice. Everything is a choice, right? And of course, there are circumstances where maybe you don't have a choice in that moment. And, you know, I'm not speaking to those people. Writing a book or starting a podcast or a business, or these things are luxuries, of course. If we have the ability to do that, in saying that, it almost feels like a disservice to the people who really, truly can't. If we have the power and we have the resources and we have the mind and, you know, and it's on our bucket list or on our vision board and we're not doing it, why?
Yeah.
Right? If we can and we aren't, what is it that's blocking us? And I think what is often blocking us is looking at that peak of the mountain going, that's too much. take me out, helicopter,
Yeah.
come and get me, right? Instead of just looking one step ahead, one checkpoint ahead, one like little tiny climb ahead to the next break, to the next moment.
Yeah. So did you know that there's an actual mechanism in our brain that is like constantly measuring effort for outcome? And so just to back what you're saying, but with neuroscience is
Yeah.
when your brain sees that peak and it
Yeah.
knows, it's not stupid. It knows this is a stretch.
Yeah.
If it thinks it's not possible, it's not worth the effort, there's a possibility it could fail, there's a possibility I won't make it, it will send a message. It will literally go into cognitive shutdown. It will send a message to your nervous system. And this is what we call a freeze.
Yeah.
So it is so real. And whether you're climbing Machu Picchu or you're one of those people that just opens up your computer for the day and you have 407 tabs open and your phone is ding dinging at you and your team chats are ding dinging and you tend to just look at the computer and go, I don't feel like I even can see the forest through the trees. I don't know what the next step is that I should take. It's because you're in a freeze, because you're in a cognitive shutdown, because you've bit off more than you can chew. Declutter that shit. Okay. Break it down to one baby step. What's the step in front of me? Set yourself up for success. Get yourself in rooms with powerful people that will stand for your potential and make sure you don't get too far off course. And one step to the next step to the next step to the next step is how you get there.
Yeah.
But we want to shoot for the stars, especially my community. Listen, we have big effing goals and dreams. We're on the recovery journey of perfectionism, amongst other things. So we can't help but go big, but then we don't realize that we're paralyzing our nervous systems by not breaking it down into baby bits and taking care of ourselves too along the way.
And celebrating the baby bits. It's like,
and yes,
not every step is an easy step, right? It's like some steps are slippery and some steps are like crazy terrain up the side of a mountain that you didn't expect you'd have to actually climb with equipment.
Yeah.
That'll be another story. But
climb with equipment. Fun. That sounds like
crazy.
A lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun in hindsight. At the moment, like in that moment, it was absolutely terrifying. And I really legitimately thought I was going to die. And I chose that. Nobody said you have to climb this mountain because you like got in a plane crash and you're stuck there if you don't. That was a choice. I put myself in that because I wanted to do it. And, you know, I'm so glad I did. And I had the time of my life in hindsight. But in that moment, I was really started to regret my decisions. And I think that applies to everything, right? We question, it's hard today. Maybe I shouldn't have started a business in the first place. Or, I'm having a financial avalanche. Maybe I should just get out of here, call the helicopter, right? It really, I think it can be related to anything, relationships too, right? It's like not every day of a strong and healthy relationship is rainbows and gumdrops. Nope. Right? It's hard work. Good relationships, good marriages are hard work. You know, even relationships with your kids, parenting, it can be related to anything, right? It's like just one step at a time, one day at a time, one moment at a time, and then celebrating the little wins, celebrating every step, being like, I just took a freaking step on this mountain. Look at me go. Yay.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Remembering that, there's going to be tough steps ahead and some of the hardest steps are maybe behind you.
That's yes. Okay. That celebration piece is huge. And it's often something we look over. Mm-hmm. We just like minimize our effort. We minimize what we've done and we forget to celebrate, but the celebration is what builds the intrinsic inspiration to keep going. So it's like, it's literally an essential part of doing anything that matters to you. But I feel like as women, we're really good at minimizing things. Like, it's not that big of a deal. It's hard for us to shout from the rooftops what we're proud of.
Yeah, we feel like we can't celebrate till we reach the peak of the mountain because that was the goal. And it's like, no, no, you celebrate every single step. And the fact that, you have toes and you're hydrated and you're alive and you're breathing, even if the altitude is weird and it feels awful, you're still breathing and you're moving and you've got this, That's what I think we forget. We forget to stay connected to and it's cheesy maybe, but we forget to stay connected to the journey, and we just focus on the end, the destination, the place where we're trying to get to, instead of being like, just made it another step. Look at that step. That was a beautiful step, and my beautiful feet and my beautiful legs that got me here. It's like, yeah, celebrate everything.
Yeah, no, it's not cheesy at all. It's like the things that are quote unquote cheesy, it turns out they are like the mic drops of the universe. You know what I mean? Like it's corny because it's real, the journey. You said something really powerful that I want to double click on, which was you like heard the messages from your soul that it was that you were going to write, that you had a book in you. So for the listener who's like, what does that mean? How do I connect to my soul? How do I know when my soul is whispering something to me? What would you have to say about that?
I think it's quieter than you expect. I think we're waiting for, signs like to get smacked across the face with it, or like words to drop in from the heavens and be like, oh, there's my book, right? I think it's quieter than you'd expect. And if it's nagging at you, like if it's there and it's there again and it's there again, and it maybe sometimes is louder and then it gets quiet again because you're busy and distracted and have life. Writing a book, if that's what we're talking about specifically, it's one of those things. It is a privilege that not everyone gets to do in their life, right? It's, I think, 1% still of the human population. And we're in circles with people who are doing big things and have big goals. So oftentimes that is a big goal that people have. So we're surrounded by it. But the general population of the world, it feels like a really big thing because 1% of the population actually get to the point of publication and put their book out into the world. So I think if it's still there, and it's still telling you, it's like, okay, day after day, year after year, in some circumstances. I talk to people who've had a book on their bucket list or their vision board for like 7 years, 10 years, 20 years. And it's like, it's probably there for a reason. It's probably still telling you that. And we talk ourselves out of it often because it's not immediate return on investment. It's not an immediate, especially as business owners, we're like, it has to be income producing activity. It has to be like immediate results. I have to be able to see and measure and forecast the results, whereas a book isn't that. So I think if it's your soul telling you and not your, marketing manager or your CMO saying like, write a book for your business, it's a good idea. If it's actually your soul being like, this story needs to get out in the world, then it's for the right reasons. Right? I think like anything, you don't start a business just to make money. You start a business because you have a mission. You start a business because you have a passion and you want to monetize that in a way that helps people and also creates an income for your family, right? We don't start a business just to make money. And if you do, it's probably likely that it's either not succeeding in the way you want it to, or it doesn't feel that great, right? And it's the same with the book. It might not be, an income producing immediate result kind of thing. But if your soul is telling you your story needs to get out there, then it probably is your soul talking, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I feel like it is very quiet. It's like a gentle nudge and it's in the body. It's like in the felt sense more than it is in the thoughts of pressure, because that's more like anxiety speaking or fear speaking or your ego speaking. And I think a lot of people, it's initially their ego that wants to write this book and wants to get a result from it. And it's like, no, it's more of an act of service to be an author and to share your story because you want to help one person in the world. And it's about who you get to become in the journey of authoring your story. Like maybe, can you speak to that at all? Like, who do we get to become if we come and become your client and you help us through this journey? What is that process? What does that do to people? And I'm sure there's a wide range, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible because I work with, because of our audience and the type of books we publish, I work with doctors, lawyers, executive coaches, celebrities, speakers, TED Talk people. Like I work with what most people would call the highest level of professional and like personal development women. And they all have the same things. They all suffer from imposter syndrome. It's like, you have 17 degrees. Why do
Yeah.
you have imposter syndrome? You know what you're talking about. And it's like, everyone, it doesn't matter how educated they are. It doesn't matter how embodied they are with their message. It does not matter. And I love how earlier you called me the author doula, because people actually do call me the book doula. And it's because I help birth these book babies into the world. And it's the same as when you're a new parent. You don't know what the hell you're doing. You could be a teacher or a child psychologist, and that's not the same as parenting. Right. And that's how we relate it to books. It's like, you might be a doctor and a lawyer with 8,000 degrees and, all the life experience in the world, but you're not an author yet. And even if you are an author, you're not an author of this new book. There's new challenges that come with every book and every message and every experience. So I really love that I get to hold my clients through that experience of their becoming, because you do. And of course, your message changes and evolves. I have people who published their book 6 years ago and are like, that was what I wrote. And I was like, yes.
At the
and
time.
That's beautiful, because that's who you were. Now you can write a second book and not debunk everything that you once said, just really own who you were and look who you've become. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the most beautiful realization for so many of our authors, are the ones who publish multiple books and see their evolution and growth and really celebrate it and go, wow, I can't believe that in just that short amount of time I've become this other person. So I think it's really cool that I get to hold people in arguably their worst at some times, but I'm here for it because, like you said, I'm an advocate. I can hold it all and I can handle it. And I love watching that transformation in people. It's really powerful.
So cool. Like, yeah, I feel like that's another thing that prevents women from writing books or from launching the thing or doing the thing, is by the time you get the thing, you're already moved on. But it's like, no, it's not about doing the perfect thing. It's about capturing the essence of you at this time. And what a beautiful thing to, in some ways, rewrite the whole narrative of your life through these beautiful offers that you put out into the world. Like in psychology, we have something called narrative therapy, which I almost feel like writing a book parallels the same thing as narrative therapy, where it's like we are taking a look at the stories of our lives and the things that we've been involved in and deciding what it means, providing the meaning and turning it into the lessons and blessings, and then integrating that into the next iteration of who we're becoming. And so by like looking at your life and pulling the extraordinary lessons out of the messy bits, you are rewriting, you're deciding what you want the narrative of your life to be. And it gets to be captured at 30 years old and 35 years old and 40 and 45 and 50 and 60 and 70 and 80. And it should grow and evolve. And that's a beautiful thing. But that's why I asked you of like, what happens to people as they're authoring a book? Because it feels like a deep narrative therapeutic process, an existential process at the same time, which is why we need support when we're freaking writing books.
It's very, very parallel in a lot of ways to giving birth. The amount of time it takes, the amount of care it takes, the amount of complications that can arise, and it changes your life for the better, but it changes your life. There's before you become an author and there's after you become an author, and there's no going back from that. It does change your life. Just like there's before having children and there's after having children. There's no, oops, I changed my mind.
Right. We're in it. That's interesting to know that only 1% of the population publishes books. That motivates me for some reason. I like to be in those 1% clubs, honey.
There you
the
go.
Perfectionism comes back out to play. And I'm like, I want to be in that club. It doesn't need to make me money, but I want to share my story. Yeah.
Well, and I think the stat, and we can end on this, and it's 85% of the human population desire to add published author to their resume or to actually publish a book. And then 1% of that 85% do it.
Wow. Okay. So if someone's listening in the audience and their soul has been nudging them to write a book, how can people connect with you? What are you excited to share that's going on in your business right now?
Absolutely. I think Fem Power Publications is the name of my company. We have a website, we have social media presence, all of those things. But you can also find me at the Sabrina Greer. And I very intentionally own the. I am
the
Sabrina
one and
Greer.
only, baby.
The one and only.
Sabrina Greer.
So I'd love to connect with people on a personal level there and hear about stories. You know, I'm one of those interesting folks who just loves to hear people's stories. So don't ever feel like you're bothering me. Come tell me about your story. I love to hear them. And yeah, that's where I hang out the most, is on Instagram at the Sabrina Greer at Fem Power Publications. And thank you.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for taking the time to share more about your story and just for being an usher of women's truth in the world, because that feels really important to me at this stage in my development. It's like, the more we can usher in women's voices, let's be real, the better the planet is going to go.
I agree.
So thank you for the work that you're doing in the world, and thanks for taking the time to come.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And for the listener, take such good care of yourself, and I will see you same time, same place next week. Bye for now. Hey, mama, if you made it to the end of this episode, I just want to virtually high five you, because you've said yes to the opportunity of taking better care of yourself. And that is so meaningful and so amazing. You have no idea the ripple of goodness that's to come. If you've been enjoying the show, if you've been finding it helpful, if you've laughed a little or learned a new technique, will you do me a favor? Will you make sure that you're following the show, that you've given us a 5-star rating and left a review? That will absolutely help us get this podcast into more heads and hearts of as many mamas as possible, because when we heal the mother, we heal the world. Also, if there's a specific episode that you've loved, will you make sure to share it with a friend? Just send them the link or share it on social media, and make sure you tag me at Brooke Jean unPerfected, because I absolutely love seeing that this is actually giving you the impact that you so desire and deserve. Thank you so much, mamas. Make sure you're taking care of yourselves and therefore each other.